Hello and welcome back to Randomised Gaming's continuing coverage of Destiny. I'm Random Gamer Riven and today I'm going to be taking you through the Devils Lair Strike on Normal. This is the default version of the Strike that's available via the preset playlist, not the Strike Run version, which runs at different levels. This is the preset one. Now this is basically the same as the one we did in the beta. The difference being that the preset version this time round, by default it's level 8. As I recall in the beta, I think it was, or beta, depending how you want to pronounce it, I believe it was level 6. So the Devils Lair, of course, is our first major boss fight where we have to take down Sepiks Prime. Now, interestingly, I did this strike about a month after release, and you'll notice that one of the players I end up with is actually a 28, which is quite interesting because the game is only supposed to matchmake you with people in the same level. Now I should point out I am level 6 when I run this strike, so I'm actually 2 levels behind almost all the enemies. I think I did actually get a level up as I go through the strike, but it was a little bit of a grind, and certainly if you're running a low level strike you need to be aware of how you're going to play it, because really if you're a new player I wouldn't advise running a strike unless you're at the same level or a level below it, because you will be at a serious disadvantage. You may wonder where I've gained quite a bit of experience. That's because I've had about 3 trials of doing the strike pre-hand, and every time midway through the strike I got disconnected. So yep, Bungie, there's some work needed there. Slightly annoying when you're midway through the strike and it disconnects, but as you can see the Fallen will continue to claw at our walls, blah blah blah. There's Commander Zavala, as he's called, issuing out our orders as we prep for the next strike. Now, of course, this is one of the few matchmaking sides, so these are complete. I'm playing with 2 randoms that I've just drawn against. I haven't invited anyone into this session. But it's quite amusing when I discovered one of the randoms was actually level 28. And while I'm here, I should point out you can get at least 3 ghosts in this strike. So the first one as you come into here in the rocket yard, up here and to your left there. After that it's a straight dash through the rocket yard. There isn't actually any story based missions in the rocket yard, only you can visit it on patrol. And of course during strike missions. But it's kind of a weird area. It looks like there needed to be some sort of story mission here, because you do generally, even on the strike, just run through this section. So those enemies, as they're out on the patrol area, they're not at strike level. As soon as you go up here, you enter the darkness zone, and then all the enemies in the strike level start occurring. So bear that in mind for Nightfall, etc. As soon as you enter here, your enemies will change to the relevant level. So in this case, they're going to upgrade to level 8. If you're doing a Nightfall strike, they're going to be upgrading to level 28. So this section here is actually quite interesting. If you're on the Nightfall strike, I sometimes let the enemies fight it out amongst themselves. You have Dregs and Hive battling it out. Well, I should say Fallen and Hive, not Dregs. Dregs are one of the units. Basically you get Dregs and Vandals, and you get a couple of Thrall, a couple of Acolytes, and 1 Knight on the Hive side. So as you can see, I'm taking it quite slowly till my allies arrive, as they were somewhat slow behind me joining up. I should say, unless you're a good player, always wait for your allies. One thing to be aware of is there have been issues of AFK players on strikes. If it looks like a player is AFK, I would probably recommend you leave the strike. 1, because you don't want to give them free items for doing nothing, and 2, it does make the strike a bit harder as you're only down 2 men. Admittedly, on the later strikes, when you're running 24 strikes of a level 30 character, it's really easy to solo the strikes, but at low levels you don't want an AFK player. So there's plenty of cover in this area, and I do advise you make good use of it. The Knight is a real pain in that corner there, as of course they can always elect their shield to defend themselves, and they really do prove to be one of the tougher Hive enemies in the game. Now again, you have another battle section coming up here between Hive and that Fallen. should say. And basically it's up to you whether you want to. You can pitch in and gain some experience by helping either side, or you can just let them fight it out for a little while. Do be aware there are 2 Vandal snipers on the far left side, just on the balcony over there, and they will snipe you, and on the later difficulties they will cause an awful lot of damage, so you've got to be aware of them. Hence why I've got the shielded bit of cover to me to the left, because that way I won't get sniped by them. So there, as you can see there, I'm going to try targeting one of them. Certainly if you do come into this section, either deal with the wizard first off or deal with the Vandal snipers over on that balcony. Whichever way you want to do it, it's up to you, but I recommend you do it with one, or let them fight it out. One side will be left. Usually I find it's the Fallen that remain. The Vandal, the Hive will tend to get taken out pretty quickly, but the 2 Vandal snipers always seem to remain and always seem to be the ones doing the damage. So once you've cleared out the enemies, you trigger use the ghost on that machine, and this starts effectively what is effectively a mini horde mode. You now have to clear 3 waves of enemies. Now you need to be a little bit careful here. The minute I'm trying to hold out in the open, which isn't a good idea, certainly at my level, because the enemies are considerably more stronger. Do watch out, the guys do spawn on the balconies over there, and the first wave they're not invisible, on the second wave they are invisible. At least some of them are, and there's also a couple of non-invisible ones, but either way the snipers do a hell of a lot of damage. Now the other thing to note is that the waves are actually preset and will spawn the same every time. They also spawn pending on certain trigger points. Now in some cases those trigger points are killing all the existing enemies, and other ones it's only wiping out certain type of units or killing so many enemies of that area, because sometimes you can get a wave spawn even when you haven't cleared all of the previous wave, and you need to be wary of that, especially if you're targeting, like say, the captain, and the killing him triggers the next wave spawn, because you can rapidly find yourself being overwhelmed. It's a bit like the tip at the end of this mission, if you concentrate and kill the Baron when he appears, all his troops will remain, but as soon as you kill the Baron it triggers the exit area. So you technically don't need to kill all the troops in the final wave, you just need to kill the Baron. Now that area I just ran to the side there, I'm going to be spending most of this mission in that little corner there, because that is the best place to hide it out. Now as you can see, that was the level 28 player, and he's just sitting there for like half the opening section of the strike. Now I should also point that there is actually a ghost in that room just to the left of me. However, I won't show him till much later. In fact, I'd actually forgot to visit him in this opening section, and I ran back later to show you where he is. But at this point, it's not a good idea to pick him up when you're in the middle of a firefight. So one thing I've learnt here is this little debris bit's actually very handy for trying to be able to sneak out from cover and shoot the enemies. Most of the Vandal and the Vandal captain shots are the homing in this section. So basically what you do is, as soon as you see the shots coming towards you, you move directly behind it and the shot will home to you, but it will hit the block before it hits you. But you do have to be very careful how you shimmy out. As you can see there, I was a bit careless at that point, and so I was taken down. Now this area here, what I'm saying is basically, if you're doing Nightfall, this is where you basically camp. The enemies won't actually come up to you in close combat at this point, and you can just snipe away or use your guns to shoot at them. Admittedly, you don't get any ammo, you won't be able to pick up any ammo, but it's a safe area at least until you need to get an ammo pickup. Now, as many of you are aware, you do get an ammo pickup if you run out of ammo and wait long enough, although that doesn't actually now apply since the latest patch in Nightfall. Basically, once you run out of ammo, if you crouch or just sit down for about 2-3 minutes, you'll get a refill of some of your ammunition. On Nightfall, however, you now don't, so you need to use an ammo synthesis pack. If you don't have an ammo synthesis pack, then you're going to need to do some close combat till you can get some ammo. So again, as you can see here, I'm using this block to hide behind. Now as you can see there's some stealth vandals, so I've got to be extremely careful. Because the enemies will come a little way, as you see there, they basically attack you by where the block is. They will attack you if you're standing next to the block, but not if you're down here. Now all 3 waves are pretty much, the first 2 waves are pretty much the same. There's a couple of minor changes with additional invisible snipers and the invisible vandals. The 3rd wave is probably the most interesting because that has hive in it as well. As you see, they're all invisible, but they're not going to run to me, so I can just shoot them from afar. Now again, as you can see, the rocket launcher is incredibly handy for group kills as long as you aim it correctly. And I have no idea why I used that super there. Probably an incorrect button press or something. But yes, that's not how you use a super. But now that is how you use a rocket blast radius in the pack of an enemy's deals damage to all of them. So as you see here, I have no ammo. So basically I'm going to just crouch and hide in the corner until I get an ammo refill. And if you watch my ammunition, there is your automated refill. Now, as I said, that doesn't happen on Nightfall since the latest patch, but it happens on every other mode.
But just so you know, there's more fallen and high.
Okay, so now okay, the second wave, there's your prompt that you've now got hive and fallen on the way. So get back here because you've got a load of hive wizards and they will literally, you were okay hiding in this tunnel area, but they actually all come in from the door just in front of the tunnel section, so you don't want to be by that door else you will get hit by a couple of brawl. Now this 3rd wave's the longest, and you not only do you have a couple more invisible snipers, you get Thrall, you get some acolytes, and you get two to three hive wizards depending on the difficulty you've currently got it set to. Now I should point out there aren't many mages in the default strikes. In the later versions, such as if you're doing the strike playlist or if you're doing the weekly ones, you get a huge amount, a number of the enemies are bumped up to major status. There's also a few extra bonus enemies as well. And if they're major, of course it means they're going to take more damage, so you have to be even more careful. So they're the wizards. Always aim for their head. Again, that does more damage, but again, as you can see, they're shielded, and at the minute I don't have any solar weapons to take down their shields quickly, so I have to chip away at them very slowly. Fortunately, a sniper rifle does plenty of damage. Now, some of you may think it's a bit cowardly to hide in the corner. It is, but that's how a lot of the players are running Nightfall, because it's about the only way. You can hide in the corner at the back there sometimes. I find it gets a bit hectic, or you can hide right at the start. But again, you have to be wary of where these guys are now. You can hide just around there, but you have to be wary of certain enemies when they reinforce. Because they do come running straight past you, and there's a few bits where if the reinforcements will see you, even if you're not in there at the usual area where you confront them, they will still attack you. So basically, once this set of dregs and stealth vandals come in, these are basically the precursors to tell you that the next wave after this is the Baron itself. Okay, so this starts coming the final wave, so have a look around. You should see one last captain wearing different coloured armour.
Barrier is down. We can move now.
Okay, and it was actually the level 28 over the corner there fighting the Baron, so you didn't see him. But basically, as you can see there, we took the Baron out before we took out his enemies, and as soon as you defeat the Baron, you get that prompt. You can now move. The gate is down. You can now move to the next area. Okay, so those little things there are orbs of light. You only see them primarily when another player uses supers on enemies. But what they do is if you then pick them up, they charge your super bar by a percentage. But they do make it a lot quicker, because usually your super bar fills if you either kill enemies or waiting over time, but grabbing them increases your super bar drastically. So again, there's a small selection of enemies here. Be wary of the captain. He's probably about the hardest enemy. A lot of players I know on the more experienced runs are just ignoring that pile of enemies because they don't follow you and they just stay in that area, and basically they're just there to try and stop you, but if you just run through, most they annoy you. Okay, now probably one of the hardest parts in the strike, the tank. Or I should say the Fallen Walker is its official name. Now I didn't learn there's actually two paint jobs for the Fallen Walker. There's one that's on the moon, and that's actually a silver colour, which I was quite surprised. It was a silvery grey colour. So I fought that the other week. It was the first time I actually fought the tank in a public event on the moon, but it is there. So basically with the Walker, you want to, if you're an inexperienced player and if you haven't got a sniper, now one tactic if you've got something like the Icebreaker is to sit right at the very back where you start and snipe it from afar. You snipe it from a further enough area, it can't actually shoot you with any of its main guns. I think after a while it might start trying to target you with the turret, but that's about it. Now the tank itself has a variety of attacks. If you get too close to it, it can use an electric pulse. It can spit out shanks. Has a Gatling gun underneath it that it can fire at you. It can also use its rocket launcher Gatling cannon on the side to shoot you. Now, interestingly, you can also shoot the one on the side of the turret off. However, if you do that, the tank then switches to primarily using its central cannon only, which is not an advisable idea. So I usually, although initially a few times, like you saw me, there's a video of me shooting it off. A couple of times I decided against shooting it off because it triggers the tank just to constantly shoot you with the main blaster cannon. While that's easy to dodge, you get hit by it, it's one hit kills. And of course then there's the main blaster cannon itself. Now, fortunately the blaster cannon is side posted if it's targeted you, because you'll see a red laser line coming towards the direction it's going to shoot. You've got about 5-10 seconds after you see that, or yeah, about 5 actually, after you see that line to move. If you don't, it will fire the shot, and then that shot has a huge area effect. If you're not out of the blast radius, you will be killed instantly. Now the main way to deal with the tank, as you can see, is we're shooting at the legs. Once you shoot the legs enough, the armor will break off and the tank will collapse, and thus it will reveal the weak point at its neck where you can get a number of shots on it. So we're just blowing off the leg there. There's the weak point revealing, and now time to go for the weak point, because as you can see, shooting it normally you take like 3 hits, and then shooting the weak point you get about 30 points. Now there's something weird about the weak point. One thing I have noticed is if you shoot the weak point, if the tank's taken a lot of damage when you trigger a weak point, it will often get back up really quickly. If however the tank hasn't taken a lot of damage when you trigger a weak point, it won't. It seems that the leg breaks appear to be almost preset with how much damage you're supposed to do to them, and sometimes you can actually damage the tank anywhere. So sometimes I've seen people shooting the tank not in the legs but still causing a lot of damage. Now what I've seemed to learn, if you split the fire across the legs rather than targeting one direct leg specifically, you will probably have considerably less time to shoot the weak point of the tank, whereas if you target just one leg from the get-go, you'll have more time to shoot the weak point. It's slightly weird. I mean, it might just be a random timing event for how long you get, but it seems to be that if you just target one leg from the get-go and don't damage any other part of the tank, you'll have longer to target the weak point. You can see there. So there again, it wasn't down that long. Sometimes I've had it down for ages, and usually that's not for blowing off 2 legs either. That's about the only logic behind. I mean, I could be wrong. It could just be purely random how long it goes down. Now the other thing is, if you blow off enough legs, the tank will start limping like crazy. So there was the main blaster cannon, which I didn't avoid quick enough, so now I'm down. Now you do need to concentrate on the tanks, and your team needs to work together to take the tank down. If at low levels like me in one of the previous attempts, we managed to get to the tank before it timed out, I had 2 players who just did not shoot the tank at all, and thus it was taking forever to defeat. Now, while the tank's just about to go down, I'm going to quickly head off back to that missing ghost that I didn't collect earlier. Now there is actually another ghost right by the walker, but as the walker's still there, I'll quickly just run back and grab this one, as I should have shown it earlier, forgot. Should have really shown it when we'd actually cleared off all the enemies, but from the thing, certainly you don't want to grab it during the actual firefight because it can get a bit hairy otherwise, and certain enemies respawn from the room, actually spawn from the room that it's in. So you go through this room here, and there it is at the back there. And there's the area I was hiding down, so yep, I could have collected that much earlier. Now, despite the fact they're level 28 there, by the time I got back, they were still actually battling the tank, which actually quite surprised me because I was expecting them to have destroyed the tank by now. Or the fallen walker, I should say. The walker was still up and about. Now, it's quite tempting to snipe from that building that I'm just jumping over. Don't, because enemies there's basically you'll get a fallen captain spawn on that building if you stay on it, and he's designed to get you off it. In fact, there are a couple of points where the Bungie have cheekily introduced spawning enemies so you can't camp them. And those enemies spawn every time as well. There it goes, there's the fallen walker down. I'm just going to clear the enemies there. As soon as that door opens, once the the walker goes down, you'll then get a few enemies spawn, and up these stairs here is the final ghost of the stage. Now the only other thing left to pick up is the golden chest, which is only available in the strike itself, because you can come to this area here, but that door doesn't open. And ironically, you can actually battle the tank in patrol. So if you fancy getting some practice at the walker tank, go to this area on patrol. The tank will always be there and you can shoot him up.
So this is the Devil's Lair.
but you can't get into the Devil Lair area on patrol, so I don't think you can get this. Basically, there's a golden chest hidden down the side, which I'm just going to quickly run to as soon as I come in. Now, one thing to point out is, as I'm just quickly showing off there, is you cannot hurt any of the bosses until their initial opening animation is over. Now, Sepiks Prime is one of the longest opening animations, so don't shoot him at first, you will just see the word immune. In fact, almost all the enemy bosses, when they appear, they have a little introductory walk. Sometimes it's not even clear quite when their invulnerability period's over, but basically if you try to shoot them in that period, you'll just see the words immune. And here is the last gold chest on Earth, and this one rewards you with a green sparrow, or I should say an uncommon sparrow, which is substantially faster than your current sparrow, so it's well worth getting. Now that will only pop if that's the 5th chest. If you open them in a different order, basically the prizes are rewarded purely on the numbers, so if you were to open that chest as the 4th chest, you would get what you got from my 4th chest, and vice versa. It's entirely up to you to what order you open the golden chests in, but I do recommend you try and get them as quickly as possible. Certainly the problem with the other thing with golden chests is the gear in them, for the most part, it's only good for low level characters. Certainly by the time you get to Mars, so I was finding out on one of my other characters, even the gear you got on them by the end was rubbish, and I was just breaking it down. There's me being gunned down with some shanks. Now this area here is quite good for actually dealing with Sepiks Prime. Basically, as you can see here, I've got him in my target sights and he's struggling to hit me because I'm using the best advantage of the cover. Now this is quite a good area for the low level strikes. I tend to use this for when I'm on a weak level strike or any of the 24 tiger strikes. I don't use this area if I'm doing Nightfall because Nightfall is too hectic and you really need to hide in the room to the side. And the other thing is the only enemies that actually attack you at this point is sometimes you get 2 shanks come up the stairs, the rest of the enemies leave you well alone, which is another helpful thing. And I should also point out that I didn't know this at the time I shot this video, but you can actually jump through. There's a room basically with an invisible wall. Now the room, especially the room behind you, you can actually just jump. There's what looks like a glass pane. You can actually jump through it and it's basically a room. That glass pane there, the collision on that wall from that diagonal side isn't actually present. So you can actually hide in there. Now, a lot of the Nightfall players hide in this room, which is very, very helpful. Although, as I said, that room up the top there's even more helpful. Although I haven't actually played a Nightfall strike from it yet, as we only discovered it very recently. But certainly if you're doing the strike on Nightfall, you have to be really, really careful because I've done one version where Sepiks Prime had all the void damage enhancers, and another time where all his troops had the void damage time enhancers. Both times they were really painful, those strikes. Although generally as long as you hide in that area you're pretty much okay. The other thing is you can sneak down underground and shoot up at him if he's at the far back, which is quite helpful. So making full advantage of cover and just shooting him as much as possible. I was not overly impressed with my co-players at this section. They did not seem to be gunning him down very quickly. Now I should point out, although this area here is a great place to hide, you aren't entirely immune to Sepiks Prime. He can walk to there or directly above you, and then you have to move if you're battling him here. Generally tend to stay up here on the, like I said, on the low level strike because you don't get. So, yeah, now that's the case where you need to move if that happens. He comes out above you. But aside from him warping there, pretty much you can shoot him up the top there with relatively few enemies having to worry about. There's only a few shanks that seem to have AI path to go up the stairs. Most enemies won't come up after you. So that way it just lets you concentrate on Sepiks Prime and nothing else. Yeah, and as you can see the ship coming in. Whenever the ship comes in, it will bring in reinforcements. He has infinite ships, so you will have to deal with infinite reinforcements. Basically break up your paths and basically concentrate on dividing your time swiftly between Sepiks Prime and his troops. There you go, defeating him also rewards you with a Grimoire card. And the other thing is when he goes down, he almost is about 100% of the time he'll drop a triangle pickup, so do look for that as well. As you see there, it's a house banner this time.
But we must stay vigilant.
And that's how you run the level 8 strike. Now I will do some Nightfall videos, and I will do might do a Tiger Strike video as well for later on. But for now, that's it. Thank you for watching this Randomised Gaming video. I'm Random Gamer Riven signing off, and if you enjoy this video, feel free to subscribe and stay tuned to the channel for more videos.